When NBA legend Michael Jordan spotted a homeless man digging through a dumpster in his hometown of Wilmington, North Carolina, he never expected it to be Robert "Pop" Harrison, the high school coach who had shaped his career and character. Faced with the shocking sight of his once proud mentor fallen on hard times, Jordan didn't just offer a handout. Instead, he set in motion a plan that would restore not only Coach Harrison's home and livelihood, but also his dignity and purpose. What happened next reveals the true measure of greatness that goes far beyond championships and fame. Michael Jordan's black SUV rolled slowly through the streets of Wilmington, North Carolina. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the familiar roads of his hometown. He was back for a charity golf tournament, something he did every few years to give back to the community that raised him. "Just need to make a quick stop at Carter's," Michael told his driver. The small corner market had the best sweet tea in town, something he still craved after all these years. As the car pulled to the curb, Michael's eyes caught movement in the alley beside the store. An older man with stooped shoulders was digging through a dumpster. Something about his movements seemed familiar. Too familiar. "Wait here," Michael said, stepping out of the car. He walked toward the alley, his 6'6" frame casting a long shadow. The man must have heard footsteps because he turned, startled. His face was weathered, with deep lines etched by years of hardship. A scraggly gray beard couldn't hide his sunken cheeks. But those eyes— Michael knew those eyes. "Coach Harrison?" Michael's voice caught in his throat. The man squinted up at him, confusion crossing his face before a spark of recognition flickered in his tired eyes. "Michael?" he said, his voice raspy. "Michael Jordan?" It was him. Coach Robert "Pop" Harrison, the man who had shaped Michael's high school basketball career at Emsley A. Laney High School. The coach who had pushed him to greatness when he was just a skinny kid with big dreams. "What are you doing out here, Coach?" Michael asked, his mind racing to make sense of what he was seeing. Coach Harrison straightened his back, trying to summon some dignity. His clothes were worn and dirty, hanging loose on his frame. He looked 20 years older than he should. "Just looking for some recyclables," he said, his eyes not quite meeting Michael's. "Helps pay for things, you know." Michael felt a knot form in his stomach. This wasn't right. This man had been like a second father to him. The toughest, most respected coach in the county was now digging through trash. "When was the last time you had something to eat, Coach?" Michael asked. Harrison looked away. "Had some crackers this morning. I get by." Michael reached out his hand. "Come with me. Let's get some real food and talk." Harrison hesitated, pride warring with hunger on his face. "I don't need charity, Jordan, even from you." Michael smiled, remembering the stubborn man who had made him run suicides until he couldn't stand. "It's not charity. It's dinner with an old friend who owes you more than he can ever repay." 20 minutes later, they sat in a private room at Elijah's, a waterfront restaurant where the staff knew to give Michael privacy. Coach Harrison had cleaned up in the bathroom, washing his face and hands, trying to smooth his rumpled clothes. "The fried catfish here is still the best in town," Michael said, watching as his former coach stared at the menu prices with worry in his eyes. "Order whatever you want. This is on me." When the food arrived, Harrison ate slowly at first, then with increasing hunger. Michael waited until he'd finished half his plate, before asking the question burning in his mind. "How did this happen, Coach? Last I heard, you were still teaching at Laney." Harrison put down his fork, his eyes fixed on the table. "Life comes at you fast, Michael. One day you're on top of the world, the next—" He shrugged. "My Sarah got sick. Cancer. Insurance didn't cover most of the treatments. I spent everything we had trying to save her." Michael remembered Sarah Harrison, the coach's wife who had baked cookies for the team after big wins. She had the warmest smile. "I'm sorry," Michael said softly. "I didn't know." After she passed, I couldn't focus on coaching anymore. Took early retirement. Then the hurricane hit in 18. House was damaged bad. No flood insurance. Harrison's voice was matter-of-fact, as if he were reciting someone else's troubles. "My son, Robbie, had his own problems. Drugs. I spent what was left of my savings trying to help him get clean." Michael listened, his heart heavy. Coach Harrison had been the rock that so many young men had built their lives upon, the man who taught them discipline, dedication, and self-respect. Now, he was homeless in the same town where the gymnasium. Walls held trophies he had helped win. "Where are you staying now?" Michael asked carefully. "There's a spot under the bridge by Market Street. It's dry." Harrison's voice held a note of defensiveness. "I'm not the only one. There's a few of us veterans who look out for each other." Michael thought about the massive mansion he owned in Guy, Chicago, the vacation homes, the private jet, all the rewards that had come from the foundation of hard work and discipline that Coach Harrison had helped build. "I've got a suite at the Riverside Hotel," Michael said. "It has 2 bedrooms. The second one is just sitting empty." Harrison shook his head. "I told you, I don't want—" "It's not charity," Michael interrupted. "I need your help, Coach." Harrison raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "My help? With what?" "I'm running a basketball clinic for kids tomorrow as part of the charity weekend. Could use someone who knows how to really coach fundamentals." Michael leaned forward. "These kids today, all they want to do is shoot 3-pointers and dunk. They don't understand defense, footwork, the basics." It wasn't a lie. Michael had planned the clinic, and no one understood basketball fundamentals better than Coach Harrison. For the first time, a small smile crossed Harrison's face. "They're all trying to be like you, jumping and shooting fancy. They forget you mastered the boring stuff first." Michael nodded. "One night. Help me plan the clinic. If you don't want anything else after that, I'll respect it." Harrison studied him for a long moment. Michael could see him weighing his pride against his situation. Finally, he nodded. "One night," he agreed, "and I'm helping you, not the other way around." As they left the restaurant, Michael texted his assistant about the change in plans. His mind was already racing ahead to what came next. Because Jordan didn't just play to participate, he played to win. And right now, winning meant finding a way to save the man who had once saved him. What Coach Harrison didn't know was that Michael's help would go far beyond one night in a hotel. But that was a plan still taking shape in Michael's mind. A plan that would eventually bring the coach's story full circle in a way no one could imagine. The Riverside Hotel suite was nicer than any place Robert Harrison had seen in years. While the coach showered and changed into the fresh clothes Michael had quickly arranged, Michael sat in the living room, memories flooding back. His mind drifted to the fall of 1978, when he was just a skinny sophomore at Laney High School. The day Coach Harrison had posted the varsity roster was still etched in his memory. Michael had scanned the list once, twice, 3 times. His name wasn't there. Quentin Richardson, his best friend and neighbor, had made the team. But Michael? Jordan had been cut. "You're thinking about the cut day, aren't you?" Coach Harrison's voice broke through his thoughts. The older man stood in the doorway, looking more like himself after cleaning up. His beard was trimmed, and though the borrowed clothes hung loose on his frame, he carried himself with a hint of his old authority. Michael smiled. "How'd you know?" "You get that same look on your face whenever you think about something that makes you mad." Harrison eased himself into the chair across from Michael. Best decision I ever made. Cutting. Me? Michael raised an eyebrow. Lighting a fire under you. Harrison's eyes twinkled with a spark of his old self. I knew what I was doing. Michael laughed. You knew it would make me work harder? I knew you had something special, but you were coasting on talent. Harrison leaned forward. Some boys, you cut them, they quit. Others, they get angry and prove you wrong. I bet everything on you being the second kind. Michael shook his head in amazement. All those mornings I showed up at the gym at 6 a.m. banging on the door, and I was always there, right? Already inside. Harrison smiled at the memory. You thought I just happened to be there early. You were waiting for me? Every morning. I knew you'd show up. Harrison's voice grew softer. Some coaches look for perfect players. I looked for perfect hearts. That's what you had, Michael. Heart. The revelation stunned Michael. All those mornings, he'd thought he was proving something, pushing himself, when no one was looking. But Coach had been watching, guiding, all along. Remember those drills you made me do? The footwork ladder? Michael asked. Harrison nodded. Your feet were too slow. Not anymore, obviously. And the left-hand dribbling. Hours of it. You were all right-hand. In basketball, being one-handed is like having one arm. I had to fix that. Harrison's coach voice was returning, the commanding tone that had driven hundreds of boys to be better than they believed possible. What about the weights? You made me lift when nobody else was doing that. Skinny arms don't win rebounds. Harrison mimicked a weak shot, and they both laughed. For a moment, they were just coach and player again, the years and hardships falling away. Michael could almost smell the polished wood of the Laney gym floor, hear the squeak of sneakers, the bounce of balls. Junior year, you started to become something special, Harrison said. Remember that game against New Hanover? Michael nodded, eagerly. 35 points. And 12 rebounds, 9 assists, Harrison added. But that's not what made it special. No. You played perfect defense that night. Their best player? What was his name? Marcus Wilson. Wilson. Good player. You held him to 8 points. Harrison's eyes gleamed with pride. That's when I knew for sure. Knew what? That you weren't just going to be good. You were going to be something the world hadn't seen before. Harrison's voice dropped. That's why I pushed you so hard, yelled so much. Michael remembered those practices. Harrison demanding perfection, accepting nothing less. Running drills until players dropped, then making them run more. You used to say, tired is a choice, Michael recalled. I still hear your voice sometimes, during workouts. Harrison looked down at his hands, weathered and calloused. I wonder if I push too hard sometimes. No, Michael's answer was immediate. You gave me the foundation for everything. College, the NBA, the championships, all of it started with what you taught me. A comfortable silence settled between them. Outside, the lights of Wilmington twinkled along the Cape Fear River. The same river that had flowed past while a young Michael Jordan had transformed from a cut sophomore to a high school legend. Senior year, the scouts started coming, Michael said, breaking the silence. Remember how many would show up? Harrison nodded. Dean Smith from UNC at every game. Gave me his card like I didn't know who he was. He chuckled. I told him, you better have a scholarship ready because this boy is special. You never told me that, Michael said. Didn't want your head getting any bigger than it already was. Harrison smirked. You were getting enough attention. Michael thought about how Coach Harrison had protected him from the pressure. kept him grounded when everyone else was telling him he was already a star. Remember when I wanted to skip practice the day after we clinched the conference title? Michael asked. Harrison's face grew stern. I remember you running suicides for even suggesting it. Best lesson I ever learned. Michael leaned forward. You said something I never forgot. You said, champions don't celebrate yesterday's victories when tomorrow's battle is waiting. Harrison finished for him. You remember that? I had it written in my locker in Chicago, Michael admitted. Used it with my teammates when we won our first championship. Told them we needed 5 more. Harrison's eyes widened. You quoted me to the Bulls? All the time. Phil Jackson thought some of your sayings were his ideas. Michael laughed. I never corrected him. The coach's eyes grew misty. I had no idea. There's a lot you don't know about how much you shaped me, Michael said quietly. But that's a longer conversation. Harrison yawned, the exhaustion of his hard life catching up to him. Michael could see the toll the years had taken, the way his once powerful shoulders now slumped. You should get some rest, Coach. Tomorrow's going to be a big day, Harrison nodded, rising slowly from his chair. Those kids better be ready to work. I don't care if you're running the clinic. If they're not doing proper defensive slides, they're going to hear about it. Michael smiled, seeing flashes of the old Coach Harrison emerging. I'm counting on it. As Harrison headed to the bedroom, he paused in the doorway. Michael? Yes, Coach. Thank you. Not just for tonight, for remembering. The vulnerability in his voice was something Michael had never heard before. Get some sleep, Coach. Tomorrow's just the beginning. After Harrison's door closed, Michael pulled out his phone. He scrolled through his contacts and found the number he needed. Bill Peterson, his old teammate from Laney. It was time to start making calls. Time to put his plan into action. Because seeing Coach Harrison homeless had awakened something in Michael Jordan that the world knew well. His refusal to lose. And in this case, losing meant allowing the man who helped build his foundation to remain without one of his own. What started as a chance encounter was about to become a mission. And when Michael Jordan set his mind on a mission, the outcome was never in doubt. Morning came with golden light streaming through the hotel windows. Michael had been up for hours, making calls and arrangements. When Coach Harrison emerged from the bedroom, Michael was sitting at the dining table with coffee and a spread of breakfast foods. Sleep well? Michael asked, pushing a mug of black coffee, the way Harrison always took it, across the table. Harrison nodded, looking more rested than he had in months. Better than I have in a long time. He sat down, eyeing the food with a mixture of hunger and hesitation. Eat, Michael said. We've got a busy day ahead. As Harrison filled his plate, Michael studied him. The coach moved stiffly, wincing slightly when he reached for the toast. Years of sleeping rough had taken a toll on his body. Michael added doctor's appointment to his mental checklist. I talked to Bill Peterson this morning, Michael said casually. Remember him? Center on our team, senior year? Harrison nodded, his mouth full of eggs. Good rebounder. Terrible free throw shooter. He smiled at the memory. How's he doing? He owns 3 car dealerships now. Still in Wilmington. Michael sipped his coffee. He's going to stop by the clinic today. So is Marcus Williams and Donnie Thompson. The whole starting 5? Harrison looked surprised. Why? They want to see you, Coach. Michael set down his mug. But first, I need to understand what happened. All of it. If I'm going to help, I told you, I don't need charity. Harrison interrupted, his pride flaring. It's not charity when family helps family, Michael said firmly. And that's what you are to me. But I can't help if I don't know the whole story. Harrison stared out the window for a long moment, then sighed. Where do you want me to start? With Sarah, Michael said gently. When was she diagnosed? Harrison's eyes clouded with pain. 2015. Pancreatic cancer. By the time they found it, his voice trailed off. The doctors gave her 6 months. She fought for 18. Michael remembered Sarah Harrison's kindness, how she'd invite players over for dinner after big games, how she'd mend their uniforms when they tore. She was as much a part of the team as anyone. The medical bills must have been enormous, Michael said. Harrison nodded. Insurance covered some, but the experimental treatments weren't included. We spent our savings, took out a second mortgage. His voice hardened. I'd have spent every penny twice over if it could have saved her. Of course, Michael said softly. I'm sorry I wasn't there for the funeral. How would you have known? Harrison shrugged. It was a small service anyway. Just family and a few friends. When did you leave Laney? Right after Sarah died. Couldn't focus on coaching anymore. Harrison's gaze turned distant. Kids need a coach who's all in. I wasn't anymore. And the hurricane? Michael prompted. Florence. 2018. Harrison's voice grew bitter. House was near the river. Got 6 feet of water inside. Lost everything. All our photos, Sarah's things, everything we'd collected over 40 years of marriage. Michael remembered Hurricane Florence's devastation. It had hit Wilmington hard, causing billions in damage. FEMA gave me some money, but not enough to rebuild. No flood insurance. Harrison stared into his coffee cup. I moved into a small apartment, was making do on my pension. Then what happened? Michael asked, sensing there was more to the story. Harrison's face darkened. Robbie happened. Michael remembered Coach Harrison's only son. He'd been a few years older than Michael, a decent basketball player, but not great. He'd gone to community college, then joined the military. He came back from Afghanistan different, Harrison said heavily. Angry, couldn't hold a job, started using painkillers for an old injury, then stronger stuff. I didn't know, Michael said. How could you? I didn't tell anyone. Harrison's voice cracked. My son, the boy I raised to be strong and disciplined, was sleeping on my couch, stealing money from my wallet. He looked up, eyes swimming with shame and pain. But he's still my boy. What did you do? Michael asked, though he could guess the answer. Everything. Paid for 3 different rehab programs. Good ones, expensive ones. He'd get clean, then relapse. Harrison's hands trembled slightly. Last time, he needed bail money. Got caught breaking into a pharmacy. $10,000 I didn't have. So you took out a loan? Michael asked. Harrison nodded. At my age, the only loan I could get had interest rates that should be illegal. Couldn't keep up with the payments on my fixed income. They took my car first, then came after the apartment. Where's Robbie now? Michael asked. Harrison's eyes clouded. Don't know. Haven't seen him in 8 months. Last I heard, he was heading to Florida. His voice broke. I failed him, Michael. Failed my own son. You didn't fail him, Michael said firmly. You did everything you could. Not enough. Harrison's voice was hollow. I couldn't save Sarah. Couldn't save my home. Couldn't save Robbie. So here I am, the great Coach Harrison, digging through trash cans at 73. The bitterness in his voice cut through Michael. This proud man, who had shaped so many young lives, reduced to such desperation. When did you become homeless? Michael asked. About a year ago. Lived in my car for a few months first, until they repossessed it. Harrison's voice was matter-of-fact, as if he were discussing someone else's tragedy. Stayed with a buddy for a while, but his daughter moved back in. There wasn't room. Did you try shelters? Harrison shook his head. Too crowded. Too many. Rules. And I still had my pride. A bitter laugh escaped him. Pride doesn't keep you warm in January, though. What about other teachers from Laney? Former players? Michael couldn't believe no one had helped. I didn't tell anyone. Harrison's jaw tightened. Would you? Would the great Michael Jordan want people knowing he was sleeping under a bridge? The question hit Michael hard. He understood pride. It was what had driven him his entire life. No, he admitted. I wouldn't want anyone to know. So there you have it. The sad story of Robert Harrison, from coach to bum in 8 short years. Harrison pushed his plate away, appetite gone. Now you know why I can't go to that clinic today. Can't face those kids, those old players, not like this. Michael leaned forward. Those kids don't know you, Coach. And your players? They remember who you were, who you still are. A man who taught them about more than basketball. A man who showed them how to be strong, even when life is hard. Harrison shook his head. Pretty words, Michael. But the man those boys remember doesn't exist anymore. He's sitting right in front of me, Michael said firmly. You think you're the first person to hit rock bottom? The first to have life knock them down? You taught me that it's not about getting knocked down. It's about getting back up, Harrison finished automatically, the phrase he'd repeated thousands of times in practices. That's just coach talk. No, Michael said. That's life talk. And it's time you started listening to your own lessons. He stood up, gathering the breakfast dishes. Shower's all yours. The clinic starts at noon. Your coaching outfit is hanging in the bathroom. Michael, I can't. Michael's voice took on an edge Harrison recognized well. The competitive fire that had made him a legend. That word wasn't allowed in your gym, Coach. And it's not allowed here either. For a moment, the two men locked eyes in a battle of wills. Then, slowly, something shifted in Harrison's gaze. A tiny spark, like an ember that refused to die. One clinic, he said finally. Then we're even. Michael nodded, hiding his smile. It was a start, and for today, that was enough. Because what Coach Harrison didn't realize was that the clinic was just the beginning, the first step in a plan that would change everything. As Harrison headed to the shower, Michael's phone buzzed with messages from his old teammates, confirming they would be there. The pieces were falling into place. Step 1 of the mission was underway. The Wilmington Community Center buzzed with excitement. Word had spread that Michael Jordan was running a free basketball clinic for local kids, and the gymnasium was packed. 70 children, ages 10 to 16, sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes wide with anticipation. Parents lined the walls, phones ready to capture the moment their children received coaching from the greatest basketball player of all time. Michael stood at center court, microphone in hand. He wore a simple white t-shirt and black shorts. No logos or flashy designs. This wasn't about promotion or publicity. No cameras were allowed except for parents. Thanks for coming today, Michael began. Basketball gave me everything in my life, and it all started right here in Wilmington. But I didn't become Michael Jordan on my own. His eyes found Coach Harrison, who stood nervously by the bleachers. The old coach looked different now, dressed in the coaching outfit Michael had provided, a crisp blue polo shirt and khaki pants. He'd trimmed his beard neatly, and though still thin, he stood taller, his shoulders squaring with remembered dignity. The most important person in my basketball life, besides my family, was my high school coach, Michael continued. He taught me fundamentals, discipline, and heart. And today, you're lucky because Coach Robert Harrison is going to help me teach you the same things. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some of the older parents recognized the name, looking at Harrison with surprise. Michael beckoned to Harrison. "Coach, come show these kids how it's done." For a moment, Harrison hesitated, frozen in place. Then, slowly, he walked to center court. The gym fell silent. Michael handed him the microphone, and their eyes met, a silent message passing between them. Harrison cleared his throat. "Basketball is simple," he began, his voice gaining strength with each word. "Dribble, pass, shoot, defend. Master those 4 things, and you can play anywhere. Today, we're going to work on all 4. Just like that, Coach Harrison was back. He divided the kids into groups, demonstrating proper defensive stance, the same way he had shown Michael 40 years earlier. His voice rang with authority, and the children responded, hanging on his every word. Michael stepped back, watching with satisfaction. This was the Coach Harrison he remembered, commanding, knowledgeable, demanding excellence while somehow making it fun. As Harrison worked with one group on passing drills, Michael felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find Bill Peterson standing there, grinning widely. At 6'8", Bill had been the tallest player on their high school team, a decent center who had gone on to play Division II college ball. "He hasn't changed a bit," Bill said, nodding toward Harrison. "Still scary as hell." Michael laughed. "Some things never change." "I got your message. We all did." Bill's expression grew serious. "Is it really as bad as you said?" Michael nodded. "Worse. I found him digging through dumpsters, Bill, living under a bridge." Bill's face darkened. "Why didn't he reach out? Any of us would have helped." "Would you have told anyone if it was you?" Michael asked. Bill was silent, understanding. "Immediately. The others are coming?" Michael asked. "Yeah. Marcus is already here, watching from the back. Donnie's flying in from Charlotte tonight. Tony couldn't make it. He's working overseas, but he's in for whatever we decide." Michael nodded. "Good. We'll meet after the clinic at my hotel." For the next 2 hours, Coach Harrison ran the clinic like it was 1981 again. He made kids do drills over and over until they got them right. He barked orders, praised good effort, and didn't accept excuses. The children, rather than being intimidated, thrived under his attention. Even kids who had come just to see Michael. Jordan found themselves caught up in Harrison's coaching. Michael stepped in occasionally to demonstrate or share stories, but mostly he let Harrison take the lead. This wasn't just about teaching basketball, it was about giving Harrison back his purpose, even if just for an afternoon. As the clinic wound down, Michael gathered everyone at center court. The kids were sweaty and tired, but buzzing with excitement. "Before you go," Michael said, "I want to tell you something important. The moves and skills you learned today, they're the same ones that helped me win 6 NBA championships." The kids' eyes widened. But more important than any basketball lesson is what Coach Harrison taught me about life. When you get knocked down, you get back up. When something's hard, you work harder. And when someone believes in you, you never, ever let them down. Michael placed his hand on Harrison's shoulder. "This man believed in me when no one else did. He pushed me when I wanted to quit. Every success I've had started with the lessons he taught me." Harrison's eyes glistened with unshed tears. After the final applause, as parents and children filed out clutching autographs, The old teammates gathered around Harrison. 6 men, now in their 50s, who had once been boys under his guidance. "Coach, you're looking good," Marcus Williams said, though the lie was obvious to everyone. "Don't sugarcoat it, Williams," Harrison replied with a hint of his old gruffness. "I look like what I am, an old man who's had a rough time." "We heard about Sarah," Donnie Thompson said quietly. "We should have been there." Harrison shook his head. "That's life. No need for regrets." "There's always need for regrets when you let down family," Bill Peterson said firmly. "And that's what we are." Michael watched the interaction with satisfaction. Step 1 of his plan was working, reconnecting Harrison with the community he'd lost. Now, for step 2. "Coach needs a place to stay," Michael said. "I've got him covered for now, but I'm leaving town after the charity event tomorrow." The men exchanged glances. "I've got a guest house," Bill offered immediately. "It's small, but comfortable. All yours for as long as you need, Coach." Harrison's face flushed. "I told Michael, I don't want charity." "It's not charity," Bill interrupted. "I need someone to watch the place when I travel for business." "Consider it a job." Michael hid his smile. He hadn't even needed to brief Bill on what to say. Some bonds ran too deep to need explanation. "We're meeting tonight," Michael told the group. "My hotel, 8 o'clock. We have more to discuss." As they walked to the car, Harrison was quiet, processing everything that had happened. "You set me up," he finally said. "Yes," Michael admitted. "Why?" Michael turned to him, his expression serious. "Because you once told me something I never forgot. You said, 'A true champion isn't measured by how high he climbs, but by how many people he brings with him.'" Harrison looked startled. "I said that. Senior year. After we won the state championship." Michael smiled. "Time for me to live up to that lesson." The hotel suite's living room looked like a gathering of successful businessmen, which it was. Michael had ordered food and drinks, creating a casual atmosphere as his former teammates arrived one by one. By 8 o'clock, they were all there. Bill Peterson, the car dealership owner, Marcus Williams, now a bank executive, Donnie Thompson, who ran a construction company, and Tony Davis, joining via video call from his engineering job in Singapore. 5 successful men whose lives had all been shaped, in one way or another, by the 6th man in the room, Coach Robert Harrison. Harrison sat somewhat uncomfortably in an armchair, still not used to being the center of attention after years of invisibility on the streets. He nursed a glass of water, while the others enjoyed beers and traded stories about their playing days. "Remember that time Coach made us run sprints in the rain?" Marcus laughed, shaking his head. "We thought he was crazy." "I was teaching you mental toughness," Harrison said defensively, but with a slight smile. "Game conditions aren't always perfect." "Tell that to the pneumonia I caught," Tony joked from the laptop screen. The conversation flowed easily. Years, melting away as they reminisced about championship games, tough practices, and teenage mishaps. Harrison gradually relaxed, his eyes brightening as he recalled details the players had forgotten, their statistics, their improvements, their struggles. After about an hour, Michael caught Bill's eye and nodded slightly. It was time to shift the conversation. "Coach," Bill said, his tone turning serious, "Michael told us what happened. About Sarah, the hurricane, Robbie. All of it." The room fell silent. Harrison's face tightened, the brief joy fading from his eyes. "We need to know why you didn't." "Reach out to any of us," Donnie said. "We would have helped. You know that." Harrison stared down at his hands. "You all have your own lives, your own families. My problems aren't your burden. That's not how this works." Marcus said firmly. You were there for all of us when we needed you. Not just as a coach, as a guide, a mentor. When my dad died, junior year, Tony added from the screen, you drove me to school every day for a month. Remember that? My mom couldn't get me there because of her work schedule. Harrison nodded slowly. And when I was struggling with algebra, Bill said, you arranged for that tutor. Paid for it yourself. I wouldn't have graduated without that help. You came to my mother's funeral, Donnie said quietly. Stood beside me when I didn't have anyone else. Harrison looked up, surprised. You remember that? Of course I do, Donnie replied. I was 17, scared. You told me I was strong enough to get through it. And because you believed it, I believed it too. Michael watched silently as each man shared his story. This was the heart of his plan, reminding Harrison of the impact he'd had, the lives he'd shaped beyond basketball. You were more than a coach, Marcus summed up. You were the father some of us didn't have, the mentor all of us needed. Harrison's eyes glistened. That was my job, he said hoarsely. No, Michael finally spoke. Teaching us basketball was your job. Everything else, that was who you are. The room fell silent again, heavy with emotion. So now it's our turn, Michael continued. We're not offering charity, Coach. We're offering payback for an investment you made in us decades ago. Harrison shook his head. I didn't do any of that expecting something in return. Exactly, Michael said. That's why you deserve it even more. Michael stood up and walked to the center of the room. The others watched, seeing the same determination in his eyes that had made him a champion 6 times over. Here's what we're going to do, Michael said. Bill has offered his guest house. That gives you a place to stay immediately. Harrison began to protest, but Michael held up his hand. It's temporary, because we have something better in mind. Michael nodded to Marcus, who pulled out his tablet and brought up a document. The Wilmington Youth Center needs a basketball director, Marcus explained. They've been looking for months, but can't afford someone with real coaching experience. Until now, Michael added. I've spoken with the board. They're prepared to create a position, head of basketball development, full-time, with benefits. Harrison's eyes widened. Michael, I'm 73 years old. Nobody's hiring a 73-year-old homeless man. They're not hiring a homeless man, Donnie cut in. They're hiring Coach Robert Harrison, who developed one of the greatest basketball players in history, along with countless college athletes and successful men. And as for your age, Bill added, they see it as an asset, experience, wisdom, things those kids desperately need. Harrison looked around the room, clearly overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Michael suggested. There's more, Tony said from the screen. We've all pitched in to create a fund. First priority is finding you proper housing. And medical care, Marcus added. Full checkup? Any treatments you need? And we're going to find Robbie, Donnie said quietly. My construction company works with a rehabilitation program that helps veterans with addiction issues. If we can locate him, we'll get him the help he needs. Harrison's composure finally broke. His shoulders began to shake as tears slid down his weathered cheeks. Michael moved to his side, placing a hand on his shoulder. This isn't charity, Michael repeated softly. This is family. For several minutes, no one spoke as Harrison wiped his eyes, struggling to regain his composure. Finally, he looked up, his gaze moving from one face to another. You were always a good team, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Best I ever coached. "We had a good coach," Bill replied simply. As the night continued, they worked out details of their plan. Michael would handle the financial arrangements with the youth center. Bill would get Harrison settled in the guest house. Marcus would arrange medical appointments. Donnie would start the search for Robbie. Tony would set up a monthly video call to check in with everyone. It was nearly midnight when the meeting broke up. As the others left, Michael stayed behind with Harrison, who sat quietly, still processing everything that had happened. "It's a lot to take in," Michael acknowledged. Harrison nodded. "Yesterday, I was digging through trash for my next meal. Today," he shook his head in disbelief. "Life changes fast," Michael said. "Both ways," Harrison looked up at him. "Why are you doing all this, Michael? Really?" Michael sat down across from him. "Because a long time ago, you taught me that greatness isn't just about what you achieve. It's about what you give back." The plan was in motion, but Michael knew this was just the beginning. The greatest challenge still lay ahead. The next morning, Michael woke early. The charity golf tournament didn't start until noon, giving him time for what might be the most important meeting of his visit. He dressed in casual business attire and headed downstairs to the hotel restaurant. The woman waiting for him was in her 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair and intelligent eyes. Diane Wilson was the executive director of the Wilmington Youth Center, and she had rearranged her entire morning to meet with Michael Jordan. "Ms. Wilson," Michael greeted her, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. When Michael Jordan calls, you make time," she replied with a warm smile. "And please, call me Diane." They ordered coffee, and Michael got straight to the point. "Tell me about the youth center," he said. "The real picture, not the glossy brochure." "Version," Diane sighed, her expression turning serious. "We serve about 200 kids, ages 8 to 18, most from low-income households, single parents, foster care, some homeless." She stirred her coffee. "We provide after-school programs, meals, tutoring, sports. And your basketball program?" "Exists in name only," she admitted. "We have a gym, but no dedicated coach. Volunteers come and go. The kids love basketball, but they need consistency, structure." Michael nodded. This was exactly what he'd expected after his preliminary research. "What about funding?" "Always a struggle." Diane didn't sugarcoat it. "City grants, private donations. We make it work, but there's never enough to do what the kids really need. And if someone wanted to establish a permanent position, a basketball director with a proper salary and benefits, what would that take?" Michael asked. Diane looked at him thoughtfully. "Annually? About $65,000 for salary, plus benefits. Call it $85,000 all in. But we don't have that kind of budget for a sports position." Michael smiled. "What if you did?" Diane's eyes widened slightly, as understanding dawned. "This is about Coach Harrison, isn't it? Marcus Williams called me yesterday." "It is," Michael confirmed. "You've heard about his situation?" She nodded. "It's shocking. He was a legend in this town. My own son played for him in the 90s. I want to create a position for him," Michael said. "Full funding, guaranteed for 5 years. But it has to be real, Diane, not charity. He needs to earn his place, make a difference. From what I remember of Coach Harrison, he wouldn't have it any other way," Diane said. "But Michael, with all due respect, he's been homeless. Is he really ready for this responsibility?" It was a fair question, and Michael appreciated her directness. "He's not the same man you remember," Michael acknowledged. "He's been through hell. But yesterday, I watched him coach kids for 2 hours, and the old Coach Harrison was there." The knowledge, the passion, the ability to connect. He just needs a chance to find himself again. Diane considered this. We could start part-time, see how it goes. Michael shook his head. Full-time from day one. I'll cover everything. Salary, benefits, equipment, uniforms, whatever the basketball program needs. That's incredibly generous, Diane said. But why? I know he was your coach, but this is extraordinary. Michael was quiet for a moment. When I was cut from the varsity team sophomore year, I was devastated. Coach Harrison could have just forgotten about me, focused on the players who made the team. Instead, he showed up at the gym at 6 a.m. every day to work with me. He invested in me when there was no guarantee of return. Michael's eyes were intense. I'm just returning that investment. Diane nodded, understanding. There's something else, Michael continued. His son, Robbie. He's struggling with addiction. If we can locate him, I want to offer him treatment and a path back to his father. The youth center could be part of that. We do have connections with recovery programs, Diane said thoughtfully, and many of our teens face similar challenges. Having someone on staff who understands that journey could be valuable. Exactly, Michael agreed. This isn't just about repaying a debt. It's about creating something that helps everyone. They spent the next hour working out details. By the time they parted, they had the framework of a plan, a full-time position for Coach Harrison, starting in 2 weeks, a comprehensive basketball program for the youth center kids, potential outreach to local schools, and the possibility of integrating Robbie Harrison, if they could find him, into the center's recovery network. After Diane left, Michael made another series of calls. The first was to his financial advisor, arranging the transfer of funds that would sustain the program for 5 years. The second was to his real estate agent in Chicago, with very specific instructions about a property search in Wilmington. That afternoon, as Michael played in the charity golf tournament, his mind was only partially on the game. Between holes, he checked his phone for updates from the various people he had set in motion on Harrison's behalf. A text from Donnie brought the first breakthrough. Found a lead on Robbie. Working contact in Miami PD. Will update tonight. Another. Message from his real estate agent. 3 properties match your criteria. Sending details now. By the time Michael returned to the hotel that evening, Coach Harrison was already there, looking more animated than Michael had seen him yet. The clinic had clearly awakened something in him. There's a boy at the youth center, Harrison said as soon as Michael walked in. Terrell. 14 years old. Raw talent like you wouldn't believe. But no fundamentals, no discipline. His eyes gleamed with the old fire. I've been thinking about drills for him, ways to develop his game. Michael smiled, hiding his satisfaction. This was exactly what he'd hoped for. Harrison finding purpose again. The youth center, huh? Michael said casually. Diane Wilson seems impressed with you. Harrison looked surprised. You talked to Diane? This morning, Michael confirmed. She mentioned they need a basketball director. Harrison's expression changed, becoming guarded. Michael, before you say anything, Michael interrupted. This isn't a handout. The position pays $65,000 a year, full benefits. You'd be responsible for developing a complete program, practices, games, tournaments, accountable for results. Why would they hire me? I've been out of coaching for years, and my current situation, Harrison trailed off. They're hiring Coach Robert Harrison, who took Laney High to 3 state championships and developed dozens of college players. Michael's voice was firm. Your current situation is temporary. Your knowledge and ability are permanent. Harrison paced the room, clearly conflicted. I don't know, Michael. It's a lot to take on. Too much for the man who used to run 3 practices a day? Michael challenged him. Who coached varsity, JV, and the middle school team all at once? Harrison stopped pacing. That was a different time. I was different. No, Michael said, firmly. Your circumstances were different. You're still the same Coach Harrison who never accepted excuses from his players. The challenge hung in the air between them. Harrison's jaw tightened. The same expression Michael remembered from practices when he'd tried to slack off. When would they want me to start? Harrison finally asked. 2 weeks, Michael replied. Time to get you settled. Proper clothes. Medical checkup. Harrison nodded slowly. I'll think about it. Michael knew that was as good as a yes. Coach Harrison never could resist a challenge. While you're thinking, Michael said casually, Bill is expecting us for dinner at his place. You should see the guest house, just to consider your options. As they headed out, Michael's phone buzzed again. Another text from Donnie. Confirmed. Robbie is in Miami. In county jail, minor charges. I'm on it. Michael smiled to himself. The secret plan was coming together, piece by piece. But the most important piece, restoring Harrison's belief in himself, was going to take more than money or opportunities. It would take something Harrison had once given to Michael, unwavering faith in his potential. Bill Peterson's home sat on 3 acres overlooking the Intracoastal Waterway. A sprawling Georgian-style mansion with a circular driveway, it spoke of success and prosperity. Michael watched Harrison's face as they pulled up, noting the flicker of discomfort in the older man's eyes. Bill did well for himself, Harrison murmured. Said he learned business sense from you, Michael replied. Remember how you made him team treasurer? Handling all the fundraising money? Harrison nodded slowly. He was good with numbers, better than with free throws. Bill greeted them at the door with warm handshakes, leading them through his impressive home to the back patio. The evening was pleasant, with a gentle breeze coming off the water. A table was set for dinner, and Bill's wife Karen joined them, treating Harrison with natural warmth that put him more at ease. After dinner, Bill suggested showing Harrison the guest house. The small cottage sat at the edge of the property, separated from the main house by a garden. It was modest but immaculate. 1 bedroom, a small living area, kitchenette, and bathroom. It's fully furnished, Bill explained as they toured the IA space. Private entrance. You'd have your own keys. Come and go as you please. Harrison walked through slowly, running his hand over the kitchen counter, looking out at the water view from the small deck. It's too much, he said finally, his voice tight. I can't accept this. It's sitting empty, Bill countered. Has been for years. My in-laws used to stay here, but they've passed on. Now it's just wasted space. Harrison shook his head. I appreciate the thought, Bill, but I can't. Michael and Bill exchanged glances. This was the moment they had anticipated. Harrison's pride pushing back against their help. Let's head back to the main house, Michael suggested. Karen mentioned coffee and dessert. As they walked through the garden, Harrison remained silent, his shoulders tense. When they reached the patio, he turned to face both men. I need to say something, he began, his voice strained. What you're trying to do, the youth center job, this place to stay. I know it comes from a good place, but I can't start over, based on charity. It's not, Bill started, but Harrison held up his hand. Please, let me finish. He took a deep breath. For 2 years, I've been invisible. People walk past me on the street like I don't exist. When they do see me, it's with disgust or pity. Do you know what that does to a man? Neither Michael nor Bill answered. It strips away everything. Not just your dignity, your identity. Harrison's voice grew stronger. I'm not the man you remember. That Coach Harrison died with Sarah, drowned in the hurricane, disappeared when Robbie did. Michael started to speak, but Harrison continued. My biggest failure wasn't losing my home or ending up on the streets. It was failing my son. His voice broke slightly. You want to help me restart my life, but without Robbie, what's the point? He's out there somewhere, probably still using, maybe dying, and I couldn't save him. The painful admission hung in the air. Michael glanced at Bill, giving a slight nod. Time to change tactics. Coach, Michael said quietly, do you remember the regional finals my senior year? Against Pinecrest? Harrison looked confused by the change of subject. Of course. We were down 15 points at halftime. You came into the locker room, Michael continued, and instead of yelling, you just sat there. Then you told us about your father. Harrison's expression changed, memory washing over his face. My father was a factory worker, Harrison said softly. Worked 60 hours a week to put food on the table. Never complained. You told us he taught you that a man's true character shows not when he's winning, but when everything is stacked against him, Michael said. That's when you find out what you're really made of. Harrison nodded slowly. In the second half, we came back and won by 2 points, Michael continued. Not because of skill. Pinecrest had more talent. We won because you taught us about perseverance. That was a long time ago, Harrison said. The lesson isn't any less true today, Michael replied. Everything is stacked against you right now, Coach. That's not a reason to give up. It's a reason to show what you're made of. Harrison's jaw tightened. Don't use my own words against me, Michael. Someone needs to, Michael said firmly. Because you're not listening to them yourself. The tension between them crackled. Bill and Karen exchanged concerned glances, but Michael didn't back down. This was necessary, challenging Harrison the way Harrison had once challenged him. Finally, Harrison spoke, his voice low. Even if I wanted to start over, how can I face community people knowing where I've been? Kids look up to coaches. Parents trust them. Who's going to trust a man who was digging through their trash last week? I would, Bill said immediately. With my own children. So would I, Karen added, speaking up for the first time. A man who's faced hardship and survived has wisdom to share. Harrison shook his head, unconvinced. You know what I think? Michael said. I think you're scared. Harrison's head snapped up. Excuse me? Scared, Michael repeated. Not of failing, of succeeding. Because if you succeed, it means you could have pulled yourself out of this sooner. It means accepting help, being vulnerable. Harrison's face flushed with anger. You have no idea what I've been through. No, I don't, Michael agreed. But I know what you taught me, that excuses are just fear wearing a mask. Harrison stared at him, the anger in his eyes slowly giving way to something else. Recognition. You're using my playbook against me, he said finally, a hint of grudging respect in his voice. Learned from the best, Michael replied. A long silence followed. Then Harrison sighed deeply, the fight seeming to drain out of him. What about Robbie? He asked quietly. Even if I get back on my feet, how can I live with myself knowing he's out there, struggling? It was the opening Michael had been waiting for. What if we could find him? Get him help? Hope flickered briefly in Harrison's eyes, quickly replaced by skepticism. We've been down that road, 3 rehab programs, thousands of dollars. Nothing worked. Maybe he wasn't ready then, Michael suggested. Maybe seeing you rebuild your life could be the motivation he needs. Harrison looked unconvinced, but didn't argue the point. One step at a time, Coach, Michael said gently. Bill's guest house. 2 weeks to think about the youth center job. No commitments beyond that. Harrison looked around at the three faces watching him. Michael's determined, Bill's hopeful, Karen's compassionate. His shoulders sagged slightly, not in defeat, but in surrender to possibility. 2 weeks, he agreed finally. But I'll pay. Rent. Whatever I can afford from the youth center job, if I take it. Deal, Bill said quickly, before Harrison could change his mind. Later that night, as Michael drove them back to the hotel to collect Harrison's few belongings, the older man was quiet, staring out the window at the darkened streets of Wilmington. I'm still not convinced this will work, Harrison said finally. I'm convinced enough for both of us, Michael replied. Just as Harrison had once believed in a cut sophomore with a chip on his shoulder, Michael now believed in the broken man beside him. The circle was beginning to close. 1 week passed quickly. Harrison settled into Bill's guest house, slowly growing accustomed to having a roof over his head again. Michael had returned to Chicago, but his presence was still felt through the steady implementation of his plan. Marcus took Harrison shopping for clothes. Donnie arranged doctor's appointments. Bill stopped by daily, sometimes just to chat. By the time Diane Wilson called to invite Harrison to visit the youth center, he had begun to look more like his old self. The new clothes fit properly. A haircut and well-trimmed beard made him appear distinguished rather than desperate. Most importantly, regular meals and a proper bed had restored some of his energy. Still, as Bill drove him to the Wilmington Youth Center on a sunny Tuesday morning, Harrison's hands fidgeted nervously in his lap. What if I can't do it anymore? He asked quietly. It's been years since I coached regularly. It's like riding a bike, Bill assured him. Once you're back in a gym with kids who need you, it'll all come back. The Wilmington Youth Center was housed in a former elementary school building. The brick structure had seen better days, with peeling paint and an outdated playground, but it was clean and well-maintained within its budget constraints. Diane met them at the entrance, greeting Harrison warmly. Coach Harrison, it's wonderful to see you again. My son Jason played for you in '98. Harrison searched his memory. Jason Wilson. Good defender. Needed work on his jump shot. Diane laughed, delighted. That's him. He's a police officer now, in Charlotte. Still plays in a league every weekend. Her easy manner helped calm Harrison's nerves as she led him through the building. The center was busy even in the morning, with some programs for younger children and teens who weren't in school for various reasons. Most of our kids come after 3 p.m., Diane explained. We provide a safe place, meals, academic support. For many, it's the only stable environment in their lives. Harrison nodded, understanding. He'd seen enough as a teacher and coach to know how crucial such places were. And the gym? He asked. Diane's face lit up. I've been saving that for last. She led them down a hallway and through double doors into a gymnasium. It was smaller than a regulation high school court, with a worn wooden floor and outdated equipment. But to Harrison, it was beautiful. A blank canvas of possibility. We have balls. Some uniforms donated by the high schools, Diane said. Not much equipment for training. Harrison walked to center court, looking around thoughtfully. In his mind, he could already see drills set up. Kids running through exercises, the organized chaos of proper practice. The rims are uneven, he noted. Left one's about an inch lower than regulation. Diane looked impressed. You can tell that just by looking? Harrison nodded. After 40 years of coaching, you develop an eye for it. He pointed to other areas. Floor needs resurfacing in that corner. Backboard on the right has a slight tilt. Nothing that can't be fixed. If you take the position, Diane said carefully, you'd have a budget for equipment and repairs. Michael was very clear about that. Harrison continued his inspection, moving to the small equipment room off the court. Basketballs in various states of wear, some cones, a few jump ropes. What about the kids? He asked. How many would be in the program? Currently, about 40 regularly use the gym. But it's unstructured, Diane explained. With a real program, we could have 80 to 100 involved. Different age groups. Harrison nodded, wheels turning in his head. There's someone I'd like you to meet, Diane said. She gestured to a tall, thin African-American teenager who had been shooting baskets at the far end of the court. Terrell, come over here, please. The boy approached cautiously. He was about 14, all arms and legs, with the lankiness of someone still growing into his height. Terrell, this is Coach Harrison. He might be starting a basketball program. Here. The boy looked Harrison up and down, unimpressed. You coached before? A few years, Harrison replied dryly, including a player named Michael Jordan. You might have heard of him. Terrell's eyes widened slightly, but he tried to maintain his cool demeanor. For real? You coached Jordan? Laney High School, 1978 to 1981, Harrison confirmed. A hint of respect entered the boy's expression. Can you help with my jump shot? It's broken. Harrison raised an eyebrow. Let me see it. Terrell took a ball, dribbled twice, and shot from the free throw line. The mechanics were all wrong. Elbow out, release point inconsistent, no follow-through. Again, Harrison instructed. The boy shot 3 more times. Harrison watched intently, then nodded. Your elbow's flying out like a chicken wing, he said, bluntly. No arc on the ball. And you're rushing. Terrell frowned. That's what's wrong. That's the start of what's wrong, Harrison corrected. Takes hundreds of repetitions to fix a broken shot. Can you show me? There was an eagerness in Terrell's voice that he couldn't quite hide. Harrison hesitated only briefly before taking the ball. His body was older, stiffer, but the muscle memory remained. He demonstrated proper form, the fluid motion ingrained. Over decades. Like this. Elbow in. Follow through. Hold the gooseneck. He shot, and the ball arced perfectly, swishing through the net. Terrell's eyes lit up. Do it again. For the next 15 minutes, Harrison worked with Terrell on his shooting form, demonstrating, correcting, encouraging. Bill and Diane stepped back, watching as the transformation happened before their eyes. The hesitant, uncertain man who had entered the building was gone. In his place stood Coach Harrison, confident, authoritative, in his element. More teens drifted in, curious about the new adult. Soon Harrison had 5 boys running a simple shooting drill, his voice carrying across the gym with familiar authority. Use. The backboard. It's there for a reason, he called. Marcus, bend your knees more. Deshaun, follow through. I want to see that wrist snap. The boys responded, adjusting their form, competing to get his approval. Harrison moved among them, giving individual pointers, demonstrating techniques. He seemed to have forgotten everything else, his circumstances, his troubles, his audience. Diane moved to stand beside Bill. Is that the same man you brought in an hour ago? She asked quietly. Bill smiled. That's Coach Harrison, the real one. When Harrison finally returned to them, there was color in his cheeks and a light in his eyes that hadn't been there before. The talent's raw, but it's there, he said. Terrell has Division I on potential if he works. The shorter one, Deshaun, has great court vision. Could be a point guard with the right development. So, Diane said, smiling. The position. Are you interested? Harrison looked back at the court, where the boys were still practicing the drills he'd shown them. For the first time in years, he felt needed, valuable, purposeful. Yes, he said simply. I'm interested. As they left, Terrell called after him. You coming back tomorrow, Coach? Harrison paused, then nodded. 3 o'clock. Don't be late. The boy grinned. Yes, sir. In the car, Harrison was quiet, processing what had just happened. The simple exchange, being called Coach again by a youth who needed guidance, had touched something deep within him. You were right, he admitted to Bill. It did come back. Bill nodded, satisfied. Some things never really leave us. They just wait for the right moment to return. Days turned into weeks as Harrison settled into his new routine. Every afternoon from 3 to 7 p.m., he was at the youth center, building a basketball program from scratch. The early awkwardness faded. Quickly, as he found his footing, his confidence growing with each session. Word spread among Wilmington's youth. What had started with 5 curious teenagers soon grew to 20 regular attendees, then 30. Harrison organized them by age and ability, creating structured practices with proper warm-ups, drills, and scrimmages. Michael kept his distance, but stayed informed through daily updates from Bill, Marcus, and Diane. He'd purposely stepped back, knowing that Harrison needed to rebuild his life on his own terms. The foundation was there. Now Harrison had to do the work himself. 1 month after starting at the youth center, Harrison was in the gym early, setting up for afternoon practice. He had just finished arranging cones for a dribbling drill when Diane walked in with a visitor, a short, balding man in his 60s. Coach Harrison, Diane called. There's someone here who'd like to meet you. Harrison wiped his hands on his pants and walked over. The visitor extended his hand. Frank Miller, Wilmington Star News, he introduced himself. Sports editor. Harrison's face tightened slightly. I'm not interested in interviews, Mr. Miller. It's not about your personal situation, Miller clarified quickly. It's about what you're building here. Word's getting around about your program. Harrison looked skeptical. It's just basic basketball training. Nothing newsworthy. Miller smiled. In a time when kids are glued to screens, you've got 30 teenagers showing up voluntarily for structured physical activity. That's definitely newsworthy. Diane gave Harrison an encouraging nod. Frank's a good guy, Coach. The center could use the publicity. Harrison hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. You can watch practice. We can talk after. That afternoon's session was one of the best yet. Maybe it was the presence of a reporter, or maybe it was the growing cohesion of the group, but the energy in the gym was electric. Harrison moved from group to group, demonstrating, correcting, pushing for excellence. Terrell, now Harrison's unofficial assistant, helped with the younger kids. His shot had improved dramatically over the past month, and with it, his confidence. He mimicked Harrison's coaching style, right down to the firm but encouraging tone. After practice, as the kids filtered out, Miller approached Harrison again. That was impressive, the reporter said sincerely. You've got something special happening here. Harrison shrugged, but there was pride in his eyes. They're good kids, just need direction. Like that tall boy, Terrell. He looks like he's got potential. Division I potential, Harrison agreed, if he stays focused. They talked for nearly an hour. Harrison carefully avoided his personal history, keeping the conversation on the basketball program and the youth center. Miller didn't push, sensing the boundaries. 3 days later, the article appeared in the sports section of the Wilmington Star News. Former Laney coach builds youth basketball program. It was a straightforward piece focusing on Harrison's coaching methods and the positive impact on local youth. Only a brief mention was made of his return to Wilmington after years away, with no details of his homeless period. The response was immediate. That afternoon, attendance at practice jumped to 40 kids. By the end of the week, there were 50. Harrison had to create a waiting list and additional practice times to accommodate everyone. More surprising were the calls from local businesses offering sponsorship, new uniforms, equipment, even funds for tournament travel. The community was responding, not to a charity case, but to a program with genuine value. Harrison found himself working longer hours, arriving early to prepare, staying late to plan. His weathered face, once creased with worry and despair, now showed different lines, the focused concentration of a man with purpose. One evening, as he locked up the gym, Terrell lingered behind. "Coach, can I ask you something?" the boy said, uncharacteristically hesitant. "Of course." Harrison put down his clipboard. "My mom says you used to be homeless." "That true?" Harrison stiffened. This was the moment he had dreaded, when his past would collide with his present, potentially undermining his authority with the kids. "Yes," he said finally, deciding honesty was the only option. "For about a year." Terrell nodded slowly, processing this. "What happened?" Harrison considered how much to share. "A series of bad things. My wife died. Hurricane damaged my house. I made some poor financial decisions trying to help someone I love." "My uncle was homeless for a while," Terrell said quietly. "After he got back from Iraq, had some problems." "It can happen to anyone," Harrison said. "One day you're standing on solid ground, the next the floor drops out from under you." Terrell looked at him with new eyes, not with pity, but with something like respect. "But you got back up." Harrison smiled slightly at the echo of his own coaching philosophy. "Yes, with help." "That's what you're always telling us," Terrell said. "Getting knocked down isn't failure. Staying down is." Harrison nodded, surprised, and moved that his words had made such an impact. "So what do I tell the other kids?" Terrell asked. "About you being homeless?" Harrison thought carefully before answering. "Tell them the truth. That people go through hard times. That what matters isn't what knocks you down, but whether you get back up." Terrell nodded, seeming satisfied with this answer. "See you tomorrow, Coach." "Don't be late," Harrison called after him. 3 o'clock sharp." Alone in the gym, Harrison let out a long breath. The conversation had been difficult, but necessary. His past wasn't something to hide. It was part of him now, another chapter in the story he was living. The next day, he noticed some of the kids looking at him differently, whispering among themselves, but by the end of practice, it was business as usual. If anything, there was a new level of respect in how they responded to his coaching. That evening, Harrison sat on the small deck of Bill's guest house, watching the sunset over the water. He thought about the past 6 weeks, the transformation that had occurred not just in his circumstances, but within himself. He was Coach Harrison again. Not the same as before. This version was humbler, more compassionate, with the hard-earned wisdom that only comes from profound loss and recovery. But the core of who he had always been, the teacher, the mentor, the builder of young people, that had returned in full force. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. The screen showed a number he didn't recognize with a Miami area code. "Hello?" he answered cautiously. "Dad?" The voice on the other end was hesitant, raspy, but unmistakable. Harrison's heart stopped. "Robbie." "Yeah, Dad. It's me." Robbie's voice sounded tired, worn thin like old fabric. Harrison gripped the phone tightly, a storm of emotions washing over him. Joy, fear, hope, and apprehension all mixed together. "Where are you? Are you okay?" The questions tumbled out. "I'm in Miami, and I'm better. Not great, but better." There was a pause. "I'm in a treatment center." Harrison sank into a chair, his legs suddenly weak. "Treatment? How long?" 30 days so far. Got 20 more to go." Robbie's voice had a cautious quality, as if he was carefully choosing each word. "It's different this time." Harrison had heard those words before, through years of Robbie's addiction struggles. Hope followed by disappointment had been their pattern for so long. "That's good, son," he said, trying to keep his tone even. "I'm proud of you for getting help." Another pause. "Dad, I know about what happened to you. That you were homeless." Robbie's voice cracked slightly. "They told me, here. Your friend Donnie found me, got me into this place." Harrison closed his eyes. Michael's network had come through. Donnie had found Robbie, just as promised. "I'm okay now," Harrison said. "Things are better." "They said you're coaching again." "At a youth center." "Yes, it's a good program. Good kids." The conversation was stilted, years of distance and pain creating a chasm between them that couldn't be bridged in one phone call. "Dad, I'm sorry," Robbie finally said, his voice breaking. "For everything. Taking your money. Disappearing. I was so messed up." Harrison swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, too, for not knowing how to help you better. The counselor here says I need to make amends, part of recovery." Robbie hesitated. "I'd like to see you when I finish the program, if that's okay." "Of course it's okay," Harrison replied immediately. "When do you get out?" 3 weeks. But they recommend continuing outpatient treatment wherever I end up." Harrison took a deep breath. "You could come here, to Wilmington. There are good programs, and I have a place for you to stay." He thought of the small guest house, how he could make room. "I don't know, Dad. It's been a long time, and I've hurt you so much. You're my son, Robbie. There's nothing that can change that." They talked. For a few more minutes, the conversation gradually becoming less strained. Robbie shared more about his treatment program, about finally accepting help after being arrested again in Miami. Harrison told him about the youth center, about Terrell and the other kids, carefully avoiding mention of Michael Jordan's involvement. As they said goodbye, Harrison felt both drained and energized. His son was alive, getting help, wanting to make amends. It was more than he had dared hope for. He immediately called Donnie. "You found him," Harrison said when Donnie answered. "Michael asked me to," Donnie replied simply. "He was in county jail on a minor charge. I have a friend in the Miami PD who helped track him down. We got him into a good treatment center." "Thank you doesn't seem enough," Harrison said, his voice thick, with emotion. "No thanks needed, Coach. Just doing what you taught us, taking care of our team." After hanging up, Harrison sat on the deck for a long time, watching the stars appear over the water. His mind raced with thoughts of Robbie's return, of what it would mean, of the challenges still ahead. Recovery wasn't linear. He knew that, from his own experience. There would be setbacks, difficult days, but for the first time in years, there was hope. The next morning, Harrison arrived at the youth center earlier than usual. He had a new energy about him, a renewed purpose. If he could help these kids find their path through basketball, maybe he could help his own son find his way back. "You look different today, Coach," Diane observed when she arrived. Good news? My son called, Harrison said. He's in rehab in Miami, doing better. Diane's face lit up. That's wonderful. Will he be coming to visit? Maybe more than visit, Harrison replied. He might be moving back when he finishes the program. The youth center could use another staff member, Diane said thoughtfully. If he's interested in working with kids? Harrison hadn't considered that possibility. That's something to think about. That afternoon, practice had a special intensity. Harrison pushed the kids harder than usual, but with an underlying gentleness that they responded to instinctively. He saw each of them differently now, not just as basketball players, but as young people finding their way, just like Robbie. Terrell especially seemed to sense the change in his coach. During a water break, he approached Harrison. "Everything okay, Coach? You seem, I don't know, different today." Harrison considered the boy. So perceptive, so much potential both on and off the court. "My son called yesterday," Harrison told him. "He's been having a hard time, but he's getting better." Terrell nodded thoughtfully. "That's good. Family's important." "Yes, it is," Harrison agreed. "More important than I remembered for a while." 3 weeks passed in a blur of practices, planning, and phone calls with Robbie. Each conversation became easier, the bond between father and son slowly beginning to heal. Finally, the day arrived. Harrison waited nervously at the Wilmington bus station, scanning each arriving passenger. Then he saw him, thinner than he remembered, with new lines around his eyes, but unmistakably his son. Robbie approached cautiously, carrying a single duffel bag. For a moment, they stood facing each other, the gulf of years and pain between them. Then Harrison opened his arms, and Robbie stepped into them. "Welcome home, son," Harrison whispered. They drove in relative silence, Robbie taking in the familiar sights of Wilmington. "We're not going to the old neighborhood?" he asked, noticing the unfamiliar route. "No, I'm staying at a friend's guest house for now," Harrison explained, "until I find something more permanent." He didn't mention Michael's involvement. That would come later, when the time was right. "I'm nervous about being back," Robbie admitted. "Lots of bad memories here, people I used to use with." "It won't be easy," Harrison acknowledged, "but you've got support now, treatment programs, me. And the youth center? You really think they might have a place for me?" Harrison nodded. "Diane's already talking about it. Not right away. You need to focus on your recovery first. But when you're ready." They arrived at Bill's property. The main house was dark. Bill and Karen had tactfully made themselves scarce for the evening, giving father and son space for their reunion. "This is where you're living?" Robbie asked, taking in the beautiful waterfront setting. "For now," Harrison said. "It's temporary." As they entered the guest house, Robbie looked around with surprise at the simple but comfortable space. "It's nice, Dad. Really nice." "It's a new start," Harrison said. "For both of us." Later that evening, as they shared a simple meal, Robbie asked the question Harrison had been expecting. "How did this happen? After everything you lost, ending up on the streets, how did you get here?" Harrison took a deep breath. It was time for the truth, at least part of it. "Someone from my past found me, decided to help. Friends stepped up. People who remembered who I used to be, saw past who I had become." "Who was it?" Robbie pressed. "Who found you?" Harrison smiled slightly. "That's a story for another day. But I'll tell you this. Sometimes the people you've influenced come back into your life when you least expect it. And sometimes they change everything." 2 months passed. Spring bloomed into early summer in Wilmington. Harrison's basketball program at the youth center continued to flourish, with regular games against other community centers and even some local school teams. The waiting list had grown so large that the center added weekend sessions to accommodate more kids. Robbie's transition back to Wilmington had its challenges. He attended daily outpatient recovery meetings, carefully avoided old haunts and former drug connections, and slowly rebuilt his life one day at a time. After the first month, he began volunteering at the youth center, helping with administrative tasks and equipment maintenance. Harrison and Robbie had settled into a comfortable routine in the guest house, though it was admittedly tight for two grown men. Harrison had started looking at small apartments they might be able to afford on his youth center salary. But the Wilmington rental market was tough. "We could get a 2-bedroom in the Pine Valley area," Harrison said one evening as they ate dinner on the deck. "It's not fancy, but it's close to the center." Robbie nodded, but seemed distracted. "Dad, I've been meaning to ask you something. Who was it that really helped you? That found you when you were homeless?" Harrison had been expecting this question. He'd shared parts of the story with Robbie over the past weeks, but had left out the central figure. "Michael Jordan," he said. Simply, Robbie's fork clattered against his plate. "Michael Jordan? Are you serious? He was in town for a charity event. Happened to see me." Harrison paused, the memory still painful. "Digging through a dumpster outside a store. And he just helped you? Just like that?" Harrison shook his head. "Not exactly. He organized everything. The youth center job. Got all my old players involved. Even found you in Miami." Robbie sat back, trying to process this information. "Michael Jordan tracked me down?" "He had Donnie do it," Harrison explained. "But yes, it was all part of his plan." "Why would he do all that?" Harrison thought about it, still amazed himself. "He said he was repaying an investment I made in him years ago, when I coached him." "That's—" Robbie struggled for words. "That's incredible." "Yes," Harrison agreed. "It is." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of a car in the driveway. Bill rarely bothered them in the evening, respecting their privacy. "Are we expecting someone?" Robbie asked. Harrison shook his head, rising to see who it was. To his surprise, he saw not just Bill's car, but 3 others pulling in behind it. Marcus, Donnie, and Michael Jordan himself emerged from the vehicles. "Dad, is that—" Robbie started, looking through the window. "Yes," Harrison confirmed, equally confused. "Come on." They met the group outside. Michael stepped forward, grinning broadly, and shook Harrison's hand. "Coach, good to see you," he said warmly. "You must be Robbie." He extended his hand to Harrison's son, who looked star-struck as he shook it. "What's going on?" Harrison asked. Looking at the assembled group, Bill stepped forward. "We've got something to show you, both of you." "Get in," Michael said, gesturing to his SUV. "It's not far." Bewildered, Harrison and Robbie climbed into Michael's vehicle. The small convoy drove for about 10 minutes, turning into a quiet neighborhood of modest but well-maintained homes. They pulled up in front of a single-story brick house with a wide front porch and a basketball hoop in the driveway. "Whose house is this?" Harrison asked as they all got out. "Let's go inside," Michael suggested, not answering the question directly. The front door was unlocked. They entered into a comfortably furnished living room. Everything looked new, but not extravagant. Practical, welcoming furniture arranged around a television. Through an archway, Harrison could see a kitchen with modern appliances. "This is a nice place," he said, still confused. "But I don't understand why we're here." Michael exchanged glances with the others, then pulled something from his pocket, a set of keys. He held them out to Harrison. It's yours, Coach. Your home? Harrison stared at the keys, not comprehending. What do you mean? I mean, we bought this house for you and Robbie, Michael explained. It's all paid for. No mortgage, no rent, just property taxes and utilities, which your salary will cover easily. Harrison's legs felt weak. He sank onto the nearest chair, looking from one face to another. I can't accept this. It's too much. It's not a gift, Michael said firmly. It's an investment. In what? Harrison asked, his voice barely audible. In the future, Michael replied. In all the kids you're going to coach over the next 10, 15 years. In all the lives you're going to change, just like you changed mine. Robbie stood silently, taking it all in, watching his father's reaction. Show him the back room, Bill suggested. Michael nodded. There's something else you should see. They led Harrison down a hallway past 2 bedrooms and a bathroom to a door at the end. Michael opened it, revealing a room unlike the others. It was set up as a combination office and trophy room. The walls were lined with shelves holding basketball memorabilia, old team photos, trophies, newspaper clippings. A large desk stood in one corner with a new computer. We found some of your things in storage at Laney High, Marcus explained. The rest we gathered from former players, newspaper archives. Harrison moved slowly into the room, touching the items reverently. Here was his coaching life, preserved and honored. Decades of memories he thought had been lost forever. On the center wall hung a framed jersey, Michael Jordan's number 23 from the Bulls, autographed with the inscription, "To Coach Harrison, who taught me to never give up. Thank you." Beside it was a large framed photograph of the Laney High team from 1981, Michael's senior year. Young faces grinned at the camera, Harrison standing proudly behind them. This is... Harrison couldn't find words. Your legacy, Michael said, quietly. Too important to lose. Harrison turned to face them all, tears streaming unashamedly down his weathered cheeks. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept it, Donnie urged. Say you'll keep coaching, keep changing lives. Harrison looked at Robbie, who nodded encouragingly, his own eyes wet. When can we move in? Harrison asked finally. The room erupted in relieved laughter and cheers. Michael handed over the keys, and the others began showing them around the rest of the house. The kitchen fully stocked with food, the bedrooms furnished with everything they needed, even clothes in the closets. As the tour continued, Harrison pulled Michael aside. Why didn't you tell me about this sooner? He asked. Michael smiled. You needed to find yourself again first. To know that you could stand on your own. The house isn't what makes you Coach Harrison. You did that yourself these past months. Harrison nodded, understanding. Thank you doesn't seem enough. There's just one condition, Michael said, his expression growing serious. What's that? Michael grinned. You have to let me install a regulation basketball court in the backyard. For private lessons. Harrison laughed, a free and joyful sound that he hadn't made in years. Deal! That night, after everyone had left, Harrison and Robbie sat on their new front porch, taking in the reality of their changed circumstances. It's really ours? Robbie asked, still in disbelief. Yes, Harrison confirmed. It's really ours. I don't deserve this, Robbie said quietly. After everything I did. Harrison put his arm around his son's shoulders. It's not about deserving, Robbie. It's about second chances, and third chances, and however many it takes. Just as Michael had given Harrison a second chance, Harrison was giving one to Robbie. The circle continued, unbroken. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Harrison stood on the sidelines of the Laney High School gymnasium, The familiar smell of polished wood and sweat brought back a flood of memories. He watched as current Laney players ran drills with kids from the youth center, Terrell among them. "He's gotten even better," Michael observed, standing beside Harrison. He had flown in specifically for today's event. Harrison nodded proudly. "Full scholarship offers from 3 Division I schools already. He's leaning toward North Carolina." "Smart kid," Michael grinned, "following in my footsteps." The special joint practice was part of a new partnership between Laney High and the Wilmington Youth Center. Harrison's program had gained such a reputation that the high school coach had reached out, suggesting they work together to develop local talent. Robbie moved among the younger kids, demonstrating proper defensive stance. He had been officially hired at the youth center 2 months ago, starting as an assistant in the basketball program, but also helping with the center's new addiction support group for teens. "Your son's a natural with the kids," Michael noted. "He is," Harrison agreed. "He's found his calling." Life had settled into a new normal. Harrison and Robbie had made the house their home. Harrison's program at the youth center was thriving, with plans to expand to other sports. Robbie was 6 months sober and growing stronger every day. The dark times hadn't been forgotten, but they had been transformed into something useful. Experience that allowed both men to connect with struggling youth in a way that went beyond basketball. After practice, the Laney High principal approached them. "Coach Harrison, Mr. Jordan, everything's ready in the auditorium whenever you are." Harrison felt a flutter of nervousness. He still didn't know exactly what was planned. Michael had been secretive, saying only that the school wanted to honor its former coach. The auditorium was packed. Current students, parents, former players, including Bill, Marcus, Donnie, and Tony, and representatives from local media, filled the seats. Harrison was directed to the front row alongside Michael and Robbie. The current Laney principal, Dr. Martinez, stepped to the podium. "Today, we're gathered to honor a man who embodied the spirit of Laney High School for over 20 years. Coach Robert Harrison didn't just teach basketball. He taught life lessons that his players carry with them to this day." Harrison listened, somewhat embarrassed by the attention, but deeply moved. Speakers followed one after another. Former colleagues, players from various years, even a school board member who had been a student during Harrison's tenure. Then Michael Jordan took the stage. The room fell into a reverent hush. "Most of you know me as a 6-time NBA champion," Michael began. "But before all of that, I was just a skinny kid from Wilmington who got cut from the varsity team." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "The man who cut me was Coach Harrison." Michael smiled at Harrison. "And it was the best thing that ever happened to me." Michael shared stories from his high school days, some funny, some touching, painting a picture of a coach who demanded excellence, but also showed profound caring for his players. "What many people don't know," Michael continued, his tone growing serious, "is that a few years ago, Coach Harrison went through extremely difficult times. He lost his wife to cancer. Hurricane Florence destroyed his home. He faced challenges that would have broken most people." Harrison tensed, unsure where this was going. They had agreed not to discuss his homelessness publicly. "But true to everything he taught us," Michael continued, "Coach Harrison refused to stay down. He got back up and started a program at the Wilmington Youth Center that's changing young lives every day." Relief washed over Harrison as Michael skillfully navigated his story without revealing the painful details. Today, Laney High School wants to recognize Coach Harrison's contributions, past, present, and future, Michael said. "Dr. Martinez," the principal returned to the podium. "Coach Harrison, please join us." Harrison walked to the stage, conscious of every eye upon him. "It is my great honor," Dr. Martinez announced, "to officially name the Laney High School basketball court Harrison Court, in recognition of your extraordinary service to this school and its students." Applause thundered through the auditorium. Harrison stood stunned as a large plaque was unveiled, bearing his name and the years of his coaching tenure. "Thank you," he managed, overwhelmed by emotion. "This means more than I can say." But Michael wasn't finished. He stepped forward again. "There's one more announcement," he said. "In honor of Coach Harrison's continued commitment to developing young talent, I'm establishing the Coach Robert Harrison Scholarship Fund with an initial donation of $2 million. Gasps and applause filled the room. Harrison stared at Michael in disbelief. "This fund will provide college scholarships for student athletes from both Laney High and the Wilmington Youth Center," Michael explained, "because Coach Harrison always said education comes before basketball. The scholarships will be based on both academic achievement and athletic promise." Harrison felt tears threatening. This was beyond anything he could have imagined. As the ceremony concluded and people gathered around to congratulate him, Harrison finally pulled Michael aside. "Why?" he asked simply. "Why all of this? The house, the scholarship fund?" Michael's expression grew reflective. "Do you remember when I was 16, and you caught me skipping study hall to shoot baskets?" Harrison nodded. It was a small incident from decades ago, but he remembered. "You made me run suicides until I threw up," Michael continued. "Then you sat with me in the locker room and told me something I never forgot. You said, 'Jordan, basketball might make you famous, but how you treat people will make you great.'" Harrison vaguely recalled the conversation, one of hundreds of similar talks he'd had with players over the years. "What you don't know," Michael said quietly, "is that the night before, I overheard you talking to another coach. You mentioned turning down a college coaching position because your mother was sick and needed you here in Wilmington." Harrison's eyes widened. He had indeed been offered a position at NC State, a dream opportunity with triple his high school salary. But his mother's Parkinson's had been worsening, and he couldn't leave her. "You sacrificed your dreams to take care of family," Michael continued. "Then you spent the next day teaching me about priorities and character. That stuck with me, Coach. Through every championship, every endorsement deal, every time I had to choose between what was easy and what was right." Understanding dawned on Harrison. This wasn't just about repaying kindness or helping an old coach in trouble. It was about honoring a lesson that had shaped Michael's life beyond basketball. "I made a promise to myself back then," Michael said, "that if I ever made it big, I'd find a way to repay what you gave up. It just took me a while to fulfill it." Harrison was speechless. All these years, he had never known the impact of that small moment of integrity, witnessed by a teenager who would become the world's greatest basketball player. As they walked out of the auditorium together, the coach and his former player, now both mentors to a new generation, the circle that had begun decades ago on a high school basketball court was complete. What Michael had received, he had returned. What Harrison had lost, he had regained, transformed by the journey. Sometimes the greatest victories happen far from the spotlight, when one person believes in another enough to help them rise after a fall. In the end, that was the real story of Michael Jordan and Coach Harrison. Not just of greatness achieved, but of greatness passed on. I hope you enjoyed this heartwarming tale of second chances, mentorship, and the profound impact we can have on each other's lives. Where are you listening from today? I'd love to know what part of the world this story reached. If you enjoyed this video, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We share stories like this regularly, tales of kindness, redemption, and the extraordinary ways people help each other through difficult times. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and family. In a world that sometimes feels divided, stories of compassion and generosity remind us of our shared humanity and inspire us to look for opportunities to make a difference in someone else's life. Together, we can spread kindness and awareness. One story at a time. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next video.